Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Us humans, we're complicated beings. We really are. And I think there's lots and lots of evidence out there. I think individually we'd like to believe that we are in control. And not just necessarily in control of the things around us, but in control of our own mental faculties, if you will. And that, we're perfectly reasonable, and we're justified in the types of things we do, and we have great perception, all sorts of things, right? I mean, it's just like, yes, other people have issues. Us, me, you might think, hey, listen, I got this under control. I know what's going on. I'm not susceptible to some of the other things that are happening out there. And I find it very interesting. I find it interesting because when you start to look at the science, and I'm a big believer in science, you start to realize that it's not that we're not in control. There are aspects where we're in control, but there are also aspects of life where we're not necessarily, there are things going on we don't realize are happening. It's really what it boils down to. There's these unconscious biases that we have, and they come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. I recently ran across an article, and it talked about facial stereotypes and the biases that are there. And the article really centered on the link between someone's facial features and death penalty verdicts. And what they have done is they have looked at people's facial features, and they have determined, there's a lot of science going on. Through a lot of research, they've determined that there are certain facial features that are linked to someone perceiving someone as being untrustworthy. Doesn't mean they're untrustworthy. I want to point that out. It's just that they're perceived to be untrustworthy. People with heavy brows, downturned lips, those sorts of people appear less trustworthy than somebody who is, smiling or might have, cleaner facial features. Symmetry matters, things like that. I shouldn't say matters, but all these things go into our biases and or the biases we have, I should say. I don't know how the plural is, but you get the point. And so they've done these experimentations with both mock juries and then looked at it in the real world, and they found that in each instance, these facial features, again, a heavy brow, downturned lips, which they, through other testing, they've determined people see or perceive to be linked to untrustworthiness, were likely to get death penalty sentences, rather than something that's lighter. Whatever that might be life in prison or a certain term, and it doesn't really talk about the various crimes in here. And again, these facial features do not necessarily represent somebody's personalities. So you can have somebody who has downturned lips, and they could be trustworthy and reliable as all get out. And you could have people who are smiling and are beautiful people, and they are untrustworthy. So it's the features don't necessarily determine the characteristic, but there's something in our DNA, there's something in our mind, something that has just been brought forth from eons of human development that have these biases within our heads. And there are lots of different types of biases. There are, well, I'm not even going to get into it. I mean, there's just tons and tons of different sorts of these biases. And what they did in the study was they had participants look at mugshots of 400 inmates in Florida who were convicted of murder, and they were asked to guess who was sentenced to death versus given life imprisonment. And that's obviously done. That was obviously done in they people didn't know what their sentence was. That was kind of done in the laboratory here. Here's 400 people, life or life, the death sentence or life in prison. You look at a mugshot, you make a determination. They lay out all, they go ahead and analyze all that data, and they can look at the mugshot and they can say, okay, yeah, this person, based on previous research, would deem to be untrustworthy. And maybe there's a scale there as well. But overwhelmingly, the people who were given the death penalty by this laboratory of people, if you will, who know nothing else about what's going on, people who are deemed to have untrustworthy characteristics were overwhelmingly given the death penalty as opposed to life imprisonment. Now, and then they match that against what really happened, and what really happened, meaning what the jury actually found. The jurors actually had much more information, and the laboratory findings were lined up with the jury's findings. Okay, here's somebody that has untrustworthy characteristics. You know what? We're going to throw the book at them. They're going to go sit on death row. And you might be saying, okay, wow, that's interesting, or maybe you're full of it. I don't know, but you might, at best you're saying, okay, that's interesting. I'm not on death row. I haven't murdered anybody. Don't plan on murdering anybody, and this has nothing to do with me. Or does it? Or does it? Stop and think about it for a second. We're all prone to other people's judgments, aren't we? We all have judgments. We tend to look at people. We tend to look at people and make judgments on them. And here, this particular judgment, this particular study, had to do with people who were convicted of murder, and whether they got the death sentence or they got life in prison. And we can argue about the death sentence. That's not the purpose of this, right? It's the purpose of this conversation is, all right, who is getting this particular determination and who's not getting this particular determination based on facial features. You have facial features too. I have facial features. There are things about our facial features that people are making determinations about. I remember I used to be an attorney, and I have, I was attorney for 3 cases, but I was involved in other cases as a witness in other cases, I should say. And you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and you do. And I remember there was one particular case, and when you're a witness, you're not allowed to sit in on the proceedings before or after, because they might have to call you back. And so I left, and then it got back to me that the judge didn't believe my testimony, which to me was really hurtful because it was like, no, that's, I'm not lying. But there was something about me, he didn't believe my testimony, whatever it was. And, it was the judge's opinion on that particular case. It was something about me, something about how I told the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But there was something about me that rendered me untrustworthy. And I think we're all subject to that. And there, I don't know that there's a whole lot we can do about it. There's really not a whole lot we can do about it. We just have to recognize that these sorts of things are out there, that people can people are making determinations about us, and we're making determinations about other people. Certainly we have control over the determinations we make about other people. Sure, we have these lightning fast decisions that we make, but we can also stop and take a deep breath and say, okay, and essentially challenge our thinking. All right, that's my gut reaction to this particular person. Let me use my rational mind. Is there a basis in that? Is it really fair that I'm making a determination about somebody? The other thing I think we can control is, to a degree, we can control how we appear. I mean, obviously, short of plastic surgery, if you've got downturned lips and thick brows, it is what it is, right? But I think there's other things with respect to our appearances. How you show up in the world. I'm not always wearing a sport coat or a button-up shirt. Depends upon the people that I'm with. If it's people that I know and know well, I might be wearing a quarter zip or a hoodie. I love to wear hoodies, but I'm not going to wear a hoodie out in a professional setting, because I'm running into people who are making initial determinations about me, and I want to kind of put my best foot forward. I want them to, ultimately they may catch me in the hoodie, come to a soccer game, be at a sporting event or whatever. I'll probably be in a hoodie because, well, that's just the setting. And it might be expected there, but if I'm going to meet a banker or I'm going to do a presentation before people, I'm not going to be wearing a hoodie. That's just, I want to kind of cast the, I want to create a brand, if you will. And I want to have people have the most favorable opinion of me from the onset. Now, I do know people who don't care about that. They're going to show up in a hoodie, and that's just the way it's going to be. And if you don't accept me, then it's your problem. And that's okay. That you are certainly welcome to do that. You are certainly welcome to take that position that, hey, I'm going to show up how I show up. And, I know people who, freely just throw out swear words in the F-bomb and just, unapologetically do it. And just like, hey, if this is who I am, if you can't accept me, or don't accept me, then you don't. And that's okay. You're welcome to do that, but then you can't complain about the results either. You can't complain when somebody says, you know what, I prefer not to do business because I don't trust you. And they may not even say that, but that might be what ultimately happens. The point to all of this is that there is bias out there. It's there. You are being potentially unfairly judged, and you are unfairly judging other people. It's just a fact of life. Now, certainly you can, again, just take a step back and use your rational mind and challenge your thinking, but that unconscious bias, which kicks off your thought patterns and maybe predisposes somebody, is there. Likewise, it's working for you or against you as well. And you need to recognize that when you're out there working within your network and the types of people that you associate with. And be careful about it, because you might lose out on great opportunities as a result of a bias. And you might get good opportunities as a result of a bias. It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. But the important thing is that you recognize it's there. You recognize it's something you can't necessarily control. It's happening lightning fast. And just with a little, with that much with that much information, you're better off proceeding as opposed to just kind of going through life and either not believing that there are biases or that you're not subject to them. I think those are the two. Those are the big failings in reality, is not realizing they're there, or maybe realizing they're there and just kind of taking the opinion that, I'm too smart for that. I'm telling you right now, you're not. We're all subject to these biases.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.